Spade back here with you, High Noon Leatherworks, for another leather adventure. And today, it's the third video in this series, and I've kind of made them individual, but they kind of go back to back one another. So it actually, each video details a different step in this process, but it's for the pellet can or a dip can holster. And the first video was the build. The second video was the carving and tooling. And then today's video is going to be putting some acrylic on there. So that's our goal for today. And this should wrap this project up. And this is the third of 3 videos in this series. So if you've missed the last 2, go back, take a look at them, and that'll show you how we got to this point. So come on in and let's get started. We're to the point where we're going to put some color on this. I'll take my pellet can out, and again, we put this together with 2 fasteners, Chicago screws, so that we could show the finished product in each step and then take it apart and go back. Take the second one out here. And then we can pop the backs out. There's our hardware. That's how simple those are. I like using those in place of rivets sometimes, just for convenience. No, I am not drinking already today. This is my soapy water for my brush to rinse and wash my brush out. So let's lay this back flat. Give you another shot of what the tooling, how it turned out with the dye on it. So here's our goal. I am no artist, but I am declaring that right now. But I am going to try to follow this print as close as I possibly can. Now what I did was I had some of these colors and then I went out and got a couple more. But I've got acrylic paint here. I've got red, I've got blue, I've got yellow, I've got a black, I've got a chocolate brown color, and then I've got white. So what I'm going to do in order to get these colors as close as possible, instead of going out and buying all these greens and yellows and oranges and blue, kind of a turquoisey blue, I'm going to try, and try is the key word here, I'm going to try to mix those up myself and match as close as possible. So what I'm going to start with is this green color on the body right here. I'm going to try to match that as close as possible, and I'm going to try to do that with this brush here. It's about 7/16 inch wide. It is a black bristle brush, just a cheap brush. And then my detailing brush that I'll use for some of the color and definitely the black is a super fine 0 is what it says on it, artist brush. And it's more expensive, but you can really get some sharp detail with that. So I'll do my outlining and my small detail with that. So let's go ahead, set this aside for a second, and let's see if we can get some of this mixed up. What I'm going to mix with is toothpicks. So I've got some soapy water. I've got some paper towel here. Got all my colors, and I'm ready to go. So I'm going to take some of this yellow and put just a little bit on there. I've done a little bit of this before, and it doesn't take a lot of color. So let's start with mostly yellow, and then what we'll do is we'll add our blue in to try to come up to that green color. It's almost like a lime colored green. And this is just cardboard that I'm mixing this on. It's nothing special. In fact, I think it was off of just a cardboard box. If I get good flat pieces, I save them and use them for stuff like this and dyeing. So again, I'm going to go a little at a time and try to keep my fingers as clean as possible. And then all these toothpicks I'll just set over to the side on a piece of paper, and I can throw them all away at the same time. So there's my color. Now these colors are not neon, so they're not going to be super brilliant bright, but there's the color that I've got to do the green part on there. So let's go ahead, and I want to study this for a second and make sure that I'm getting this in the right spot. It looks like the legs and the top section, or the middle section of this body right here, is going to be that color. So let's go ahead and double check where I'm going to hit this here. And again, some of these colors get covered with just a little light hint of black. So, and I'm not starting with a lot of paint in my brush. I want to start with just a little paint. And I do want to go back to the leg here. And again, I will be adding some black detail once we get all the color down. So any of those low spots that were cut in during the carving process will probably be highlighted in black. So I'm coming down here. I don't want to get into my background, so I got to be really careful there. And then this area, beside the neck, I want to make sure that I don't go past that. So I'm going to keep turning that so that I'm comfortable. Because this leg also gets some of this green color. And you can always add more color, but you're not going to be able to take it away. So you want to be really careful about putting your color on and that you don't get too much. So we'll come all the way down to the foot. And again, just take your time. I think that's the key to any of this. And it's not going to be immediate gratification for sure, because looks like this tail gets a little green too, because it's a layered process. So you're going to put a little bit of color on, and then you'll come back and put a different color on top of that, wherever that goes. So it'll come together slowly. And this comes all the way up into his jaw. And again, I'm not putting this on heavy, but I can go back over it again. Once I get my first layer on there and see that I've got all my areas covered, and I just keep referencing my drawing, my colored drawing. And then I'm gonna take a look. Looks like this front leg the other front leg here needs to be green as a base color. So this is a little trial and error as you go. So I'll double check. Looks like that's it on the color. So I can come back now that I have all of my green base down. I can come back and put another coat on there, since now all I'm doing is covering or painting the area that I've already covered initially. And this paint seems to go a long way, so you don't have to put a ton of it on your brush. And again, don't be concerned if you don't get down in every little crevice where you carved, because like on this one, I'm going to outline all those in black when I'm done. So yeah, this is kind of tedious, but I think it's going to make for a really nice finished look. And make it really pop with that tooling and carving. So all I'm doing again is just covering a second coat where I went the first time. And this is my first base coat. Now, I'll let that dry, and it won't take too long for that to dry. It'll be pretty quick. There's my first base coat. Now what I want to do is move to my second color, which is going to be, I can either do the teal or the orange, and I think I'll do the orange next. So I'll rinse out my brush real good with soapy water, clean it out on my paper towel. And if you have enough brushes to use a separate one for each color, that's great. But I don't. I just have a few, small selection. I'll clean that until it comes out nice and clean on my white paper towel. Now I can go ahead and go to my orange. So I'll take the yellow again. Do the same thing. Put me about a nickel size of yellow. Then I'll come back with my red. Put a dot of red in there and mix that together. If I need to add more red to make it more orange, I can do that. The key is get it mixed up really good. So there's my orange color. And then I want to go by I'm going to have to use his spikes on his back, across his back, are also orange as the base color. So I'm going to have to do those with the smaller brush. So let's get a little bit of orange on here. And there's a little bit on his leg, on his front leg, on his top leg here. On the bottom. Then all this across the top that I did not hit with the green base is going to be orange. So basically I'll go in and fill that void that I left from the green across his back. With the orange color. He's got just a little bit of orange up here above the eye. Put that in there. He's got a little bit under his jaw in those scales. So we'll put that in there. Just a tiny bit up here under his back jaw. And then He's got some on his tail. I think I'm going to use the small brush for that, and the spikes here. So I'll kind of go by the picture again, and as I put the color on the raw, well, the dyed leather, it's not raw, keep in mind that you can put more paint on there and make that brighter, which we will. We'll come back just like we did the green and do a second coat. But the detail is so small on these little spikes coming off his back. You just got to be very careful not to make a mistake. And again, this is a very, very fine tipped brush. So we'll go on down to the tail, and the top of the tail has an orange tint. So we'll bring that around, and we'll go back. There it is with the first coat of the orange. We'll come back and put our second coat on. And this is time consuming. But I think it's going to be worth it. And you might think, well, you're covering up all of your detail. Nah, not really, because all I'm doing is putting color on top of that detail. And when I put my black outlines on there, it should really pop with that color. show you in just a second what that second coat does, just like the green. It's going to make a big difference. So depending on how bright and dense you want your color, that's up to you. You can, with this acrylic on this leather that I've used it before on a couple of things, and the more coats, just like anything I guess, but the more coats you put on there, the more vibrant that color is going to become. And the more that's going to stick out. Alright, so let me get a couple more spots here. Not super happy with. So there's my orange. Now what I have to do is try somehow to get a turquoise color. And I'm going to assume, again, I'm not an artist by any means. Don't profess to be. I'm just a novice trying this out, see how it's going to work. But I'll clean that up. I've got both my brushes cleaned up. We'll let that orange dry, and then we'll come back with we'll try to mix up that turquoise color. So we'll let this dry. I'll be right back. Alright, let's go ahead and see if we can't get close to this turquoise color they've got on here. Let's do the blue, and then let's add just a little bit of yellow and see what that does. Let me shake this up real good. Because I have no idea how this is going to turn out. So let's see what happens. Definitely don't want to turn it green. Looks like I could use a little bit more. And again, I'm adding one drop at a time to see what I end up with here. Let's add one more drop. And again, this is all experimenting as I go. So you should be able to, if you kind of use this method, you should be able to kind of get it as close as you would like. I'm going to do 2 drops this time and pray that I didn't overdo it, or I'll have to start mixing again. Looks like I'm getting there. I just want to get close to that teal color, but not green. I want to stay away from the green. I've already got the green on there, and I want it to contrast a little bit with that green, because that's how it is in the drawing. That's looking pretty close, pretty good. So there's my blue, kind of a turquoisey blue. So I'll go ahead and start up here in this section. Looks like it blends in a little bit with the orange. And it does look a little hard right now, the colors. When I say hard, I mean like they're solid. But what'll happen is we start adding that black shadowing over the top of it, and that's going to really soften that color up. So I'll just keep putting on my turquoise or blue. It's a bluish turquoise color. And not only shadowing with that black over top of this color, but doing the outline in black, solid black, is going to make a huge difference. So we've got this section like on his belly and under his uh, chin, his face, and then he's got a little bit down here on his tail. So we've got some green, some orange, some turquoise that all kind of blends together here on his tail. And then also on his belly. We've got it on his chest, but it also blends in down here on his belly from just behind his leg, upper part of his leg, little bit on back toward his back leg. So it looks like his nose, I'm going to use the smaller one because it looks like his nose has some of the blue on it. And this blue color, I can tell already, it's covered much better than the green or the orange. So let's go ahead and I'll wash that out. And we've got just a little bit of yellow highlights on the green. And we need to probably tone this down just a hair with a drop of red. And I'm not going to put the red right in the yellow. I'm going to put it beside it so I can dip the tip of my toothpick in there and then just mix that much at a time in with my yellow, because I just want to tone that yellow down a little bit so it's not so lemony looking, but I don't want it to be orange. And as you can see, it doesn't take very much of this. There's a lot of blue or turquoise left there. There's the yellow. So you can see all I did was use the tip of the toothpick in that red, and that's all I needed. So I'm just putting a little bit of yellow in these areas. And it may not be 100% exact, but it's going to be close with what I had to work with. So without any detail or anything, there's where I am with my colors. And you can see on that leather, they're nice and vibrant. They're bright. And then I'm going to do some white here. So I want my brush good and clean. And the only place that I really have some white is in this yellow, orange, and teal area right here underneath his jaw, right there. There's a little bit of white, and his eye. So that's going to be all I'm going to do in the white. So I don't need very much of that. And this acrylic paint for this kind of stuff, it goes a long way, and it's not very expensive. I buy it at Hobby Lobby, and I don't know, I think it's, doesn't have the price on here, but I think it's maybe, I think it's less than $2 a bottle. So, you know, for $10 you can get 5 colors. That gives you an idea. So this super fine brush makes a world of difference when you're doing the small detail. And more than anything, with my issues, with this painting is my eyesight. So what I did was I put the white on top of that yellow here between the orange and the teal, and then smudged it with my finger, and that blended that in there. So that's the only place I see white. There's a little bit of white. Let's take a look at this. There's a little tiny bit of white down this stripe on his back. So let's see what that looks like if I try to follow that off of the picture here. Looks like it goes pretty much straight down the back. Again, let me kind of smudge that just a little bit. All I'm doing is kind of rubbing that with the tip of my finger. And it's not just a bright white line that goes, I'll show it to you. It's not just a bright white line that goes through there on the back. See how it blends in? Instead of it being bright white like the eyeball is. So I'm going to do the eye one more time because I do want that to be nice and white. So I'm going to give it a second coat. It will have black outlines around it, and then obviously a pupil. So, and that'll be black. The first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and do these, do some black outlines. Let's see how that starts looking. There's the color. And again, it's not going to be perfect for me because I'm not an artist. If you're an artist and you can paint real well or draw real well or whatever, yours is going to look a lot better than mine. And it depends on what you're actually painting too. Um, I've done guitar straps before and did painting like acrylic on the name, someone's last name, and it turns out really good. But I'll show you my little trick that I do at the end of this that really makes this look good. Hopefully it'll do that. I've done it on solid colors before, never done it on multicolored layers, but we'll see how that looks or how that works when we get to the end here, and I'll show you what I do. Alright, so let's go ahead and let's do a little outlining in black. I'm just gonna put a little bit of black on there, and I can always add more if I need it. Now on this outlining of black, I'm going to want it pretty solid. So I'm not going to wipe very much of it off on my brush. And what that's doing on most of this outlining is going right down in those relief areas. Where I did my stamping. And this black looks like it's covering really well. Again, a steady hand. Sometimes that's hard for me to do. And those outlines, and it does make it a little easier to follow because of the relief where it's stamped, because that's a really fine tip brush, so it kind of just falls down in there. But again, you have to really take your time. So it is time consuming, but we'll see what kind of results we end up with here. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what I've got here as a start on these outlines, and then you'd see down here, and then I'll go ahead and bring you back when I'm done with that. Alright, so what I did was finished all of the outlines in black, which was quite a bit, with that fine brush. Then I came back with this brush, the wider brush, and I just barely got some black paint all over it. And then, as you can see on here, it's got some shading on it. That's when I did the shading, was with just a little bit of black paint on there. Not very much at all, just a little bit. And again, I'm no artist and I'm not using neon paints, but it turned out good. Now, here's the thing that I've learned doing this, trial and error. I'll get that set up and then I'll bring you right back. Okay, I did this on a couple of things that I put some acrylic paint on, and I was just trial and error, seeing what it would do, and I was super impressed by it. It is a SC Johnson product. It's called Kiwi Boot Protector, or yeah, Boot Protector. Tough silicone protection. So this has got some silicone in it. I've used it on boots and tennis shoes. It works great. So I thought, I'll try it on this and see what happens, or on some acrylic and leather. So I put on several light coats over my acrylic and over my leather, and what it seems to do is it seems to flatten out the paint and makes it real nice and flat and sharp, but it also protects that paint from the weather, or scuffs and things like that. So it does a really nice job. And again, that's by trial and error. But if you've ever used this, it doesn't take very much. And I've found that you don't have to wait for that paint, that acrylic, to dry completely before you do this. And what that does is it seems to let that paint lay real nice and flat, where you've got all those brush marks and everything in it. It allows it to lay real nice and flat, and it just reacts for some reason. I guess it's the silicone in it, reacts to that acrylic and just lets it lay real nice and flat, and gives it a little bit of sheen. So I spray that on, I let it set till it comes back to natural color or my dye color, and then I'll spray on another light coat. And once I get that, a couple of coats on there, maybe 3 coats, and it's already coming back to its natural color. Once I get that on there and it comes back and it's done, then I'll bring you back and show you the finished product. So I've got a couple of coats of that Kiwi Boot Protector silicone on there, and it's dry, it's back to its natural dyed color, but it really makes this acrylic paint really pop. So it turned out pretty good. Um, the colors aren't exact from what I was going from, but it's pretty close. And it turned out, I'm happy with it. So it turned out, let's put it back together. So let's grab our 2 Chicago screws again and pop them back in. And then we'll actually have our final finished product or project done. Pop the second Chicago screw back in. And then we can put our can back in. And there's the finished project. You see how the tail wraps around the side, and that color really pops off there. And again, these were not neon colors. These were just regular acrylic paints. Alright, so another completed project in the books, and it turned out really good. I'm happy with it. I like the way the tail wraps around the side. So that would go on your belt. And again, you could use it for like this. I'm going to use mine for hunting pellets, but you could use it for a dip can, snuff can, whatever. So I appreciate you coming along. Appreciate you watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Come back next week. We'll have a totally different project going. And as I always say, please like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you next time.